Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and welcome to the Eddy Network Podcast. This is the last podcast episode of the third season. Uh, I'm still kind of flabbergasted that I've been able to do this for as long as I have. This is episode 311, and kind of give you an idea of how significant all this is. Out of those 311 episodes, there are 221 different people who have been on the podcast, and there are more that are coming. I have about 10 or 12 that are scheduled or have already interviewed to begin the fourth season next week. Um, I have been very pleased that my intention when I began 3 years ago that I would have um, a global conversation with local leaders, that's what the character of the podcast would be, has been fulfilled. And that what is even more significant is that I've been able to do it without it being the typical, here's an agenda, here's a script, here's something that you need to talk about, and or that it's simply a way of promoting a person or their business or a book or a movie or something like that. It's been none of that. Even all of that has happened at one level or another, but this has really been about two people having a conversation that's unscripted and we don't know where it goes. My job is to take it somewhere, but I'm listening. I'm listening to what people are saying and things. I'm hearing things and I say, I want to know more. Can you take us a little bit deeper? So I think the depth of the conversations we're having, is unique. Um, these are not simulations. None of this is operated through AI. It's just me and my guest having a chat of significance, and I'm very pleased with that. And if it wasn't that, I would have stopped this long ago. And I have the feeling that when my career is actually over, which I don't know, maybe 23 years from now, no, 27 years from now, when I hit my 100th birthday, that's when I'm retiring at my 100th birthday, by the way. But when I reach that, I look back and I'll see that this thing that I've been doing um, will be the most significant thing that I did in my life because it's not just the interaction with people. It's just not our conversation. It's also that each one of these people, the vast majority of these people operate without recognition. They're doing important work, doing interesting work, they're doing valuable work. And they'll have a small circle of people who surround them. But most of these folks never attain any sort of status that would warrant uh, people to know them. But if people can find out who they are and know them because they've had a conversation with me, I'm very pleased with that. So I appreciate my guest. I thank them for who they are. I thank them for what they're doing. Thankful for their intentions and their purpose and their missions. And um, and I think for that reason, they are worth taking time every week to watch them or twice a week. And I know that that's a burden on everybody. It's a burden to try to keep up. And I have a neighbor who's trying to keep up, and I think he's I don't know how far behind he is. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter whether you watch them all or you watch a few of them. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that you're finding something there which has a beneficial effect upon you, and that you can take that thing, whatever that thing is, and you can carry that with you into the next thing that you're doing, and that your work or your life or your sense of who you are as a person has been deepened and sharpened and made more explicit so that you can do the sort of things that you want to do and then you need to do, but also you can say, I'm not going to do this. I'm setting boundaries. I'm not going to go down that road. I'm not going to follow the what everybody else is doing because I know that's not going to take me to a place where I find fulfillment or take me to a place where I find a way to live better. So I see that this is the effect that the podcast has. It gives people a sense of these are people that are worth following, or at least they're worth listening to because they have something to say to all of us. And it's my privilege to bring them to you. And I'm very grateful for that. And I'm constantly amazed at where our conversations go. And so I hope that you will continue to watch. Um, my goal for this coming year is is to talk about some things that maybe we haven't addressed at a significant level. For example, um, I'm I am convinced that when we figure out what it is that we love, and I'm not talking about a person that we love, I'm not talking about romance. I'm talking about something that we attach ourselves to because it has a depth of meaning which gives me a sense of that my life matters. And when you love the thing that matters to you, your life is better. And in I think in many of the conversations that I've had with people on the podcast, this is what they're telling us. They're telling us what they love. We may not use that name, that word, but I think it's really important. So let me suggest, well, let me offer a thought to you that you kind of ask the question, and not that you come to a quick answer, but you ask the question, am I defining myself by what I love? In in this novel that I'm writing, Answers to Questions Never Asked, the young protagonist, Robert, has come home from, it's in mid-semester of his first semester of college, and he's talking to his grandfather, who and his grandmother raised the boy and his five siblings. And he comes home during the middle of the semester, and he tells his grandfather about what his philosophy professor said. The philosophy professor is addressing the sort of things that I've been talking about and a lot of the things I've written about simulation. And the philosophy professor um, begins the semester by saying, there is no past nor future, only the now. Everything that once was in time has vanished into simulation. And the boy doesn't understand what that means. And so the grandfather and him are having this conversation, and the grandfather, well, I'm just going to read this to you because I think it's it's worth hearing. Um, uh, when the grandfather finally responded to my stories of my professor's teaching, excuse me, he wasn't interested in what he taught. The idea of simulation seemed to me to make sense. Grandfather's more interested in who my professor was. This is very similar to the way I see my guest. What does your professor love? I guess he loves philosophy and teaching university students. No, that's not what I mean. That is what he does for a job. What does he love? What does he give his life to? What is he willing to sacrifice to preserve and protect because he loves it? That's the question that I think um, is helpful to ask the question, ask of ourselves. What do I love that I'm willing to protect and preserve by the things that I do each and every day? And, maybe it's your family, maybe it's the relationship you have with your children or your spouse, or maybe it's the business that you've started. It's something you love because it is an outlet for the things that really deeply matter to you. It's not the structure of the business, but it's the activity of the business and the impact of the business on the people that you're serving or you're selling to. I mean, this is the idea of what love is. It's something which empowers us and takes us to a depth of self-awareness that is difficult to have if we are just following whatever the current meme on social media is. So the young boy is ultimately comes to the conclusion that he doesn't know what he loves and he doesn't understand a lot of the things that he's being told. And he feels like he needs to step back and try to grasp hold of what it is that he should be looking at as a lot as his life. And it's not that he doesn't know who he is. He's very clear about who he is, but there's something else that is at the heart of the questions that he feels like he must ask because no one else is asking these questions. And he feels like the answers or the material or the 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 stories that he's being given by people of different generations, like my generation, like his grandfather's generation, like his uh, his professor's generation. He feels like these are they're lacking a certain why. Why is this your perception? Why is this your position? Where did this come from? Why are you asking this question? Or what is the question that you're asking when you say that this is what I believe? I mean, these are the questions, stepping back from this book and stepping into the world we actually live in. These are the questions that people are asking, and particularly young people are asking. And I know this because I'm talking to them, and they're telling me that they feel a certain type of disconnection or a certain type of alienation because they're being told what they should believe, told the way they should carry themselves, told what to do without any logic or any rationale to that makes sense to them. I had a conversation with a young man in Cody, Wyoming last fall. We were sitting at a bar and I was telling him about my book, and I told him about this young man and how he's going to drop out of school and he's going to go kind of figure out what's going on. He needs to understand why his parents died. They die in a plane crash when he's 3, and he's very detached from that whole experience, where his siblings are not. So he has to go. He's going to get in his car and he's going to drive to where the accident took place to try to physically associate himself with his parents and their deaths. And in the story that I'm telling, it has that effect upon him. He now feels attachment to his parents, even though he is never no he was never with them after the age of 3. But that's the sort of thing I think we all need to have some kind of experience of becoming attached to something, maybe even in a physical sense of being attached, so that it has a resonance within us that carries us through each and every day. This is what I'm writing into this book, and there is intrigue and there are questions that when they appear in the text, you will go, oh, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Oh my gosh. And I was telling this to a young woman the other day, she's 28 years old, and she was viscerally moved by that twist in the story. So, and I think we all have these experiences. So to come back to the podcast, there's a parallel between the book I'm writing and the podcast. And I want more of the podcast to actually provide us a way to talk about the things that really matter to us, talk about what we love. I mean, I've been asking for a couple of years, well, what do you have hope for? And and I find that it's not a precise enough question. And but if people knew that I was going to ask them, so what is it you love? And they may be prepared to ask that question of themselves and to share that with us. And but I won't always ask that question because it will not always be the appropriate question to ask at the time. So I want you to know that it is my expectation and my intention to take the podcast to another level of depth and of meaning and of interest for you all. And I can only do that because I have really, really interesting guests to talk to. So if you know someone, and I legitimately mean, I specifically mean, if you know someone, then introduce us together. You can find my email in the show notes of the podcast. And all you have to do is send us a joint email saying, um, uh, Rachel, Ed is a podcaster. I think you two ought to be talking. I think you ought to be on her podcast, on his podcast. And then I'll send Rachel or Randolph or whoever it may be, Johnny, an invitation where they can schedule, and then within days we can be talking. And I had two yesterday. I have had one this morning, and I have another one here in another half hour. And I can tell you that it means very much to me because when I say that it's a global conversation with local leaders, what I'm really saying is that I get to enter into the local world of my guest in talking about the things that matter to them. And that's not something that a lot of what we do or what we receive through the screen provides for us. So I hope that your 2026 is a year of transformation, but I don't even know what that means for you. So let's just say that I hope that your 2026 is a time where you can connect with that which you genuinely love, that you genuinely are willing to sacrifice to protect and preserve, and that it gives you something that nothing else gives, and that it enables you to find some part of you which can stand for on its own without fear and without a sense of inadequacy, so that you can be the very best person you can be because you have decided that love is at the center of your life. And that is what I would love to see as the product of the things that I'm doing over the next year. So if you'll join me with that in that, then I think we can begin to see that our joint, collective, collaborative efforts to love the world and love people will have a significant effect upon how other people are able to live their lives. So I thank you for watching. If you can, please subscribe. And if you can financially support me, I welcome that. You should know that the in the planning of this novel, it will probably be released in a serialized fashion to people who will pay for that privilege. And that probably will happen after I've written about 20, probably maybe even 20, probably a third of the book will be written when I'm ready to start that. Because what I want to do is for those of you who would subscribe, that you will get a print copy of the book when uh, when the book is finished, and 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 one that I will definitely sign, because I hope that it's something that you would not only want to have in your own hands. I'd rather have a book in my hands than a screen, but maybe something that you could give to your friends and your family who are young and still trying to search to make sense of the life that is presented to us. So if we can do that together, then I think we can make some good things happen for people. So I thank you for watching the Eddy Network Podcast, and we'll see you next week for the beginning of season 4. Bye-bye.